It's been 10 years since the holy grail of Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door speedrunning was found, Palace Skip. It's a complicated trick that combines several unrelated glitches found by a trio of brilliant glitch hunters to achieve the game's biggest sequence break yet. Palace Skip eliminated chapters 4, 5, and most of 6 from the any percent speedrun route, saving over an hour. It took years of effort to make Palace Skip a reality, and it remained one of the most intricate tricks in the run for nearly a decade. Now, in 2026, this is what Palace Skip looks like. This is Mario with zero hitbox. It allows Mario to clip through any corner in the game, and the glitch that made this effect possible completely broke any percent. Since its discovery just a couple months ago, the new any percent route now skips getting the Yoshi Kid partner in Chapter 3, who was previously needed for Palace Skip, and as a result, the world record has fallen by nearly 50 minutes. This is by far the biggest time save in the run since Palace Skip itself, and has rejuvenated runner activity over the past couple of months. But the crazy part is that this glitch isn't entirely new. Rather, it's a new application of a glitch previously seen as useless. Sometime in December 2021, the glitch hunter Solidified Gaming was watching a TTYD speedrun community clip compilation made by one of the top runners, Sjorec. She was watching the video in a voice call with other friends, and while everyone was having a hoot and a holler, one particular clip caught her attention. In this clip, speedrunner Red2Go was attempting the double jump trick in the Rogueport sewers to skip needing Yoshi to enter Chapter 4. You jump with Mario, and while mid-jump, you enter a battle, where after fleeing the encounter, you have one frame to jump again while in midair. Red fled the battle, but something strange happened. The game crashed. This was really funny, but it also happened to be a type of crash that hadn't been investigated before. Solidified Gaming analyzed the crash reports and began to look deeper, and what she found was an interesting bug exclusive to the Japanese version. When Mario performs a spin jump, but it's interrupted by an action, such as initiating a first strike against an enemy, a function in the game's code will run. This function has different properties between the Japanese and international versions. To describe it in layman's terms, this function accesses the struct that contains all of Mario's data, including sound effect IDs that are passed onto another function. In the international releases, the sound effect IDs are dedicated variables. On the Japanese release, however, the variables that hold these sound effect IDs are reused for many other things. A key difference that results in some unintended effects. Since this function, mot_hit_post, runs when Mario's spin jump is interrupted, it means that if you interrupt the spin jump on the same frame you start it, a value of 0 would be written to an unintended location in the game's memory. This is what likely happened to Red2Go. He initiated a spin jump on the same frame Koops landed a first strike. This wrote a value of 0 to an unknown place in memory, which caused the game to crash after he fled the battle. But what if you could overwrite a property in memory that would actually be advantageous? Well, this glitch could do exactly that. Arbitrary memory write. Wait, hold on. This isn't Ace. I swear, it's interesting. It's AMW, not Ace. And to be frank, it was kind of useless at first. The main way to trigger AMW is to cancel a spin jump on the frame it begins. One of the most accessible ways to achieve this is to spin jump next to a sign, which can be read in midair for some reason. Unfortunately, the values available from reading signs did not produce useful results, often writing to inconsequential locations in memory. One room that did show potential was a room in the Great Boggly Tree, where the results of AMW could be manipulated based on Mario's Z coordinate. At the time that part was understood, however, no one knew of any value worth overwriting at the time that would be useful in a speedrun. So for several years, nothing meaningful came from this discovery. But during that time, FlexiSpot sent me their C7 Morpher chair and paid me to advertise their product in this video. That being said, this chair rocks. For nearly 2 years, I was using this raggedy old office chair for gaming and working on my videos, but it really didn't give me the ergonomic support I needed for someone sitting in front of a computer for several hours a day. Now, over 4 months in, and I've been very happy with the C7 Morpher. There's just so many adjustments to fit my needs. The backrest height, the 3D adjustable headrest, the lumbar support, and these awesome rotating armrests. This chair is great for multiple positions. I'll have it locked upright when I write and edit, and I'll recline back when I game. If you aren't entirely sold on it, fear not. There's a generous 30-day return policy and a 10-year warranty, including replacements for damaged parts. To get started, use my code C730 and enjoy up to 70% off during the spring sale. If you have a limited budget, you can check out their C7 Morpher and C5 chairs, which are also in good build quality with basic functions for adjustment as well. On New Year's Day 2026, glitch hunter Zephiles lamented how close AMW was to a useful result. One of the possible locations in memory that could be overwritten was just 4 bytes away from being able to clear Mario's hitbox value to 0, which could result in some interesting new skips. But just minutes after sending that melancholic message in the TTYD speedrunning Discord, he had found a result that was truly groundbreaking. Zephiles found a new location to overwrite, a memory address that resulted in the same desired 0 hitbox effect when Mario unspins from paper mode. This was a huge lead, and soon after, Zephiles found a position in the Room of the Great Boggly Tree in Chapter 2 that met the conditions needed for the memory write for the 0 hitbox glitch. He used a hacked setup as a proof of concept to get Mario into the working coordinates, and had a fellow runner, JakeBopDart, test to see if AMW worked on console. It did. The community wasted no time in search of a setup, which was easier said than done. As it turned out, the results of AMW were dependent on Mario's Z coordinate down to float precision. This meant that not only did they need to find a reliable method to cancel Mario's spin jump on the first frame, but it had to be in a very specific spot. As I mentioned before, while the signs were a free method to cancel the spin jump frame 1, the locations of the signs did not provide the Z coordinates needed for 0 hitbox. Instead, you need to cancel the spin by entering a battle. You'd navigate Mario to this exact spot and wait. Wait for this lone X-Naut to wander over to this side of the room. Then, as he charges towards Mario, you'd have to time a frame-perfect spin jump to hit the X-Naut. However, even if you hit the frame-perfect spin, there is still a 50-50 chance that this trick fails. As it turns out, when using Mario's Z position for AMW, the trick will only work when Mario's render time is even. If it's odd, it does not. How fun. So, after fleeing from battle, assuming you did everything correctly and passed the 50-50 check, unspinning from paper mode will give Mario a hitbox value of 0 for that room. Even when you enter a new room, all you have to do to get 0 hitbox again is to unspin from paper mode. This even works across different save files, so long as you don't hard reset the console. With this newfound possibility to be able to clip through corners, Yoshi was no longer necessary for palace skip. Beforehand, runners would get Yoshi following a bit of a convoluted route. Chapter 1 would be completed, but afterwards, a trick known as Teleporter Room Early would be performed in the Rogueport sewers to access X-Naut Fortress Early, a late-game area where enough progress would be made to bring the game to a Chapter 7 state before returning back to the teleporter. Afterwards, you'd grab the Ultra Hammer early in Rogueport, enter the Boggly Tree to grab the Super Boots to return the progression flags to Chapter 2, so then you could return to the sewers, use the Hazard Respawn glitch to access Poshley Heights in Chapter 6 early, store a jump glitch to beat Chapter 6, go get another jump storage from post-Chapter 6 email to skip getting the Blimp ticket to access Chapter 3, where you'd fight in the Glitz Pit up until you get Yoshi. All of that just to get Yoshi. And it was faster than completing Chapter 2 as intended. Afterwards, you'd buy the Power Rush badges you need for the endgame, clear the rest of Chapter 7 to access Chapter 8, perform Palace Skip, which required a random item drop to work, where 80% of the time, you'd lose a minute from not getting an item drop. But if you get that item drop and nail the trick, you then shred through the remaining boss fights and beat the game. But now, with 0 hitbox, that whole process has been eliminated. To perform Palace Skip now, you'd only need the Paper Mode Curse from Hooktail's Castle in Chapter 1, the Super Boots in Chapter 2 to perform the Zero Hitbox AMW, and the necessary badges to have a chance against the gauntlet of endgame bosses. Needless to say, 2026 was about to be a very interesting year for TTYD. But don't get it twisted. Although Palace Skip was now free, activating the glitch that made it free was not. After a while, Zephiles did end up creating a working setup, but it was still a bit too difficult for runs, as it was reliant on precise control stick angles and 4-frame perfect pauses. But it was only a matter of time until an RTA viable setup would be made, and that someone would complete a run with zero hitbox. But how long would that take? As it turned out, just a little over a week. On January 10th, 2026, JakeBopDart would step up to the plate. He had been toying around with setups for AMW for a few days, and was finally ready to do runs with the new trick. His attempts were successful. On that day, Jake became the first person to beat TTYD without Yoshi, and after his initial run, which had mistakes in on-the-fly routing, he beat the world record by over 10 minutes. A few days later, on January 13th, Jake would be the first human to complete TTYD in under 2 hours. This run was notable for being the first to not defeat Hooktail and leave Chapter 1 incomplete. Instead, Jake opted to clip into Chapter 2 early after getting the Paper Mode Curse in Hooktail's Castle. This precise clip was known about for years, but hadn't been done in runs before since it's a one-way clip. But now, with zero hitbox, there was now a way to clip back out. Over the following weeks, JakeBopDart, who had never held any main category world records before, found himself trading the world record with previous world record holders Koppe, Sjorec, and SwayNC. By the end of January, 8 people had beaten Thousand Year Door in under 2 hours, and the world record was approaching the 90-minute mark. The race for sub 130 was pretty close, but on January 16th, 2026, Koppe would become the first person to beat TTYD in under an hour and a half. In the span of a month and a half, TTYD Any% was now faster than Paper Mario 64's Any% No Ace run, and bringing about the most competitive era the game had seen in years. The usual world record contenders, the rising stars, old faces, and even some new ones. Throughout February, many others would get sub 130s of their own, with 125 being the rough estimate for the current limit. However, one of these new world record contenders was about to lead this new TTYD revolution. Someone who had never speedran TTYD before 2026, but wasn't a complete stranger to the Paper Mario speedrunning scene. As one of the most decorated glitch hunters of the first game, the one and only Rainchus was about to shake things up. After Zephiles reached out to him to help set up scripts to find working setups for AMW, Rain took a greater interest in TTYD. Since then, he's helped optimize several tricks in the run, most notably creating more consistent setups for Teleporter Room early and Chapter 2 early. He subsequently picked up the run himself, and he got good. Like, really good. Despite only having ran the game for a month, Rainchus was more than sub 130 capable, and a world record contender. But what ended up getting him on the top of the leaderboard was a new trick of his own. A new setup for zero hitbox that completely eliminated Chapter 2 from the run. Compared to Any% before AMW, the new route felt very streamlined, with far less detours than before. But while a brief dip into Chapter 2 after Teleporter Room early to Super Boots and AMW is a much smaller detour than getting Yoshi in the old route, it is still a detour nonetheless. This detour to Chapter 2 also required you to perform Jabby Hive Skip, a pretty difficult and annoying trick. Was there another place to get zero hitbox that was less out of the way? Actually, no, I have a better question. Why is the switch in the X-Dot Fortress Factory Room hit during a speedrun? No, seriously, I want to know. Or rather, on February 22nd, TTYD challenge runner Dark Koopa Troll wanted to know, and asked this question in the Discord. The reason was that it prevents a crash that occurs when opening the door when the conveyor belt isn't activated, which is what the switch turns on. But what was the cause of the crash? Well, it relates to the conveyor belt sound, and how when you exit the room when its sequence is set to a certain value, the room script tries to turn off that sound. This sound is then stored in a place we'll call GW11. But if the sound isn't playing because the conveyor belt was never activated, the game uses whatever value happens to be in GW11 at the time, which often leads to a crash. That's right, it's another instance of AMW. After several days of testing, on March 1st, Rainchus posted a new AMW setup done in the elevator room in Chapter 7. The first part of the setup focuses on getting the correct value written to GW11. This would take place before returning to Chapter 7, where you save outside the Rogue Port Inn, reset the game, wait for the book to appear in the opening before skipping to the title screen, reloading your save, going to East Rogue Port and then back outside to the inn, and then hammer outside of the inn 20 times. This sets GW11 to the correct value, and just so happens to be during the part of the run where you're heading through the inn anyways to the badge shop, so it's not a significant detour at all. Then, after returning to Chapter 7 and progressing to the factory room, you'd get 0 hitbox by getting into a precise Z coordinate next to this door to the left. Enter paper mode by holding R, release R and then pause at the same time to instantly unspin, and then open the door on a specific frame after unspinning from paper mode. It was still frame perfect, but the setup Rain created had consistent visual cues, and you didn't have to rely on enemies to run over and react to them on the fly. This cut out Chapter 2 entirely from the run, and even though it made the final bosses slightly trickier without super boots, it still saved several minutes. With this new AMW setup, Rain not only got his sub 130, but managed to set a new world record of 127.49, which as of the time of this video, is the current Paper Mario 1000 Year Door any percent world record. But there is one detail I forgot to mention. The any percent leaderboard has been split. When you visit the TTYD speedrun.com page, you'll see that the any percent leaderboard is now divided into 2 subcategories. No AMW, which is the default, and unrestricted, which is the new route. This split was made almost immediately after Jake completed his first AMW runs, since 0 hitbox fundamentally changed how you could trivialize some major sequence breaks. This by itself is not uncommon for a speedrun to do when a major skip is found, especially if it's a particularly difficult trick that increases the run's barrier of entry. Interestingly enough, any percent is the only category on the main leaderboard to have this split, at least for now. 2 months after the fact, and the no AMW version of any percent has seen no activity, while unrestricted has been seeing a lot of activity. Unsurprising considering the continued developments of strats, but it does make you wonder, was this decision to split any percent premature? Should unrestricted be the default instead? It's a bit early to tell, as both routes are quite different, but I do wonder if enough time will pass where AMW becomes the new norm, and the categories are merged, or if most categories will separate based on no AMW and AMW variants. Who knows? AMW does feel a lot less extreme than big glitch discoveries I've seen in other speedruns though, and to me seems to enhance the run a lot rather than take away, at least in my opinion. It's still early to tell whether AMW in this surge in runner activity is a short-lived fad or the mark of a TTYD renaissance. Either way, I'm very excited to see the future of TTYD speedruns and just how far this wonderful community will push this game. Special thanks to Zephiles, Sjorec, and Rainchus for proofreading my script and assisting with research for this video. Links to them, other runners, and the TTYD speedrunning leaderboard and Discord are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to shoot for the moon.